Welcome to this series of talks on Christian existentialism. In this brief introduction, I'm going to provide some background about the early Christian churches to give you a foundation for the material to come. I've long loved those science and historical fiction tales like Philip Dick's The Man in the High Castle that deal with alternative histories, with how things might have been different. The classic symbol of this, of course, is two roads diverging in a wood. You take one path or the other, and depending on the one you take, you have a completely different experience. But after a while, the path that you took might seem to be inevitable, the way things were inevitably going to be. But that inevitability is a delusion born of familiarity. The way things are now could have been vastly different. True learning occurs when you go down what is for you an alternate path. When you step through the wardrobe or the looking glass, go down the rabbit hole or through a wormhole in the space-time continuum, and experience a period of estrangement from the familiar. As when you go to an exotic country. When you return from that sort of experience, everything seems heightened, luminous, different, as though it would dawn on the first day of creation. I was once in a very near airplane crash, in which the airplane plummeted and barely recovered. And everybody on that plane thought that he or she was going to die that day. And in the days that followed, everything seemed to me luminous, breathtakingly beautiful. Okay. I'm going to ask you to imagine how Christianity as we know it today could have been dramatically different. The Christian church grew up in the first few centuries after the death of our brother Yeshua of Nazareth. And the phenomenon that became Christianity presented in that time, in those centuries, not 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 possible paths, but literally hundreds of different Christian churches and sects with vastly differing belief systems. Some posited not one God, but two, a good God whom one could encounter by undertaking arcane instruction to gain secret knowledge or gnosis, and an evil God, the Rex Mundi, who fashioned the world, this fallen world, and serves as the chief character in what we now call the Old Testament. Some of these early Christian churches, sects, held that Christ never became a man and died on a cross, but used a kind of puppet human, the kind of thing that in Jewish folklore is called a golem, to teach and perform miracles, and that it was that individual who underwent the passion, died on the cross. In one of the early texts, Christ is standing talking to the Apostle Thomas and watching the crucifixion of this person that he used as a vehicle for a while. Some early Christian sects considered all pleasure in any sexual behavior, even in marriage, extraordinarily sinful and a sure road to eternal punishment. See, for example, the Gospel of Thecla. Some practiced vegetarianism and what hippies in the 1960s called free love. Some early Christian churches posited hundreds of heavens. Some believed that heaven was already here, all around us, and all we had to do was enter a state of vision to see it. Okay. So I hope I gave you a little taste of the variation that existed in the Christian church in the couple of centuries after Christ's death. All this variation leads the biblical scholar Bart Ehrman, whom I highly recommend to you, to speak not of early Christianity, but of early Christianities in the plural. Okay, how do we know about all these differing sects? Well, there's some archaeological evidence, but mostly we know about them because there are surviving texts from them. They wrote things down, and some of those survived. By the way, you might call these early Christian sects cults. A good working definition of a cult is a baby religion. There are literally hundreds of texts that have survived as a whole or in fragments. Hundreds of early Christian gospels, acts, epistles, collections of sayings, apocalypses, liturgical manuals, and so on that did not end up as parts of the 27 books that make up what Christians today call the New Testament. That collection of officially recognized texts, by the way, the ones that made it into the New Testament, is known as the canon, C-A-N-O-N. A canon is any officially recognized set of texts. We shall explore many of these early non-canonical texts in this series. Let me just give you a little teaser. There's one called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, in which Christ as a child, sitting on a riverbank, fashions a group of sparrows out of clay. And someone seeing that he's working on the Sabbath is horrified and goes to his father Joseph and brings Joseph, and Joseph is like, "What are you doing, son? It's the Sabbath. You can't be doing that work." And in response, the child Christ turns the clay figures loose and they fly off into the sky. Okay. The story of how one variety of early Christianity became ascendant is a complex one. But basically, by the mid-2nd century CE, the four canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as well as the epistles or letters written by or attributed to Paul, had become widely accepted as the core of Christian teaching. I mean, just by word of mouth and by some writing between early Christians. It wasn't until much later that the official church, the Catholic Church, decided on a definitive set of recognized texts. Even there were some variations. There was a split between the Catholic Church, the Eastern and Western churches, and there was a separate church in Ethiopia, and there's some differences in their canons. Okay. But perhaps the most important event in the establishment of Christianity as it is known today was the conversion of the Roman Emperor Constantine I, also known as Constantine the Great. Here he is in fragments that survive of a Colossus of Constantine, and these can be found in the atrium of the Museo Capitolino in Rome. There are several accounts of Constantine's conversion. Well, a couple of contemporary accounts. In one, the emperor is preparing for battle and sees in the sky a sign of the Christian cross and the words in Latin, "In this sign you will conquer." In some, he has a dream in which he is instructed to combine the Greek letters chi and rho, the first letters in the name Christ, to make this the symbol for his army, the Chi-Rho sign for Jesus Christ. At any rate, Constantine made Christianity an official religion of the Roman Empire, and perhaps because he was sick of differing Christian factions fighting in the streets, called together a group of bishops in the Anatolian city of Nicaea in 325 CE and asked them to establish an official doctrine for the church. Constantine himself, by the way, hedged his bets. He built Christian temples and temples to the Roman sun god Sol Invictus, the conquering sun, who was widely worshipped by Roman legionnaires. Constantine himself was not baptized as a Christian until he lay on his deathbed. Okay, so because Constantine established Christianity as an official religion and called together these bishops to establish an official doctrine for the church, all these other Christianities came to be suppressed. The most important event in the establishment of the church as we know it today. And here's the thing. All these other possibilities were nipped in the bud. Now, the second most important event that shaped the church as we know it today was the work of St. Augustine. We will talk about that later. Okay, among the many early Christian texts not included in the official canon, though it was considered canonical by some early leaders of the official church, was the Gospel of Thomas, sometimes called the Coptic Gospel of Thomas, the core of which might well date to a few years after the death of Yeshua of Nazareth. There's considerable scholarly debate about its dating. Coptic, by the way, was a late version of the ancient Egyptian language. The manuscript of the Coptic Gospel of Thomas was discovered by a teenager digging in the desert in the Egyptian village of Nag Hammadi. He discovered a jar containing 13 leather-bound papyrus volumes containing, I think it's 52 Coptic language early Christian and Gnostic treatises. The Nag Hammadi Library is one of the great treasures of the earth, and the Gospel of Thomas is its greatest gem. The title is a bit of a misnomer because unlike other Gospels, it doesn't contain stories of Jesus' life. It is rather a collection of his sayings, compiled according to the manuscript by Jesus' twin brother. The introduction says, "These are the hidden words that the living Jesus spoke, and Didymus Judas Thomas wrote them down." Didymus, by the way, is the Koine Greek word for twin, and Thomas means twin in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. I'm going to share with you now two sayings from the Gospel of Thomas, this non-canonical text. This entire series will be footnotes to these two astonishing passages. Okay, verse 3 of the Gospel of Thomas, this list of sayings of Jesus' compiled by his brother. Verse 3. Jesus said, "If those who lead you say to you, 'See, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, 'It's in the sea,' then the fish will precede you." Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you, that is all around you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. Wow. Now that's very different from modern Christianity, isn't it? You are the sons of the living Father. Verse 77 of the Coptic Gospel of Thomas goes as follows. Jesus said, "It is I who am the light which is above them all. It is I who am the all. From me did the all come forth, and unto me did the all extend. Split a piece of wood, and I am there." Let me repeat that. Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Sounds a lot like pantheism or panentheism, doesn't it? It's because it is. Okay, in my extended commentary on these two passages, that is the series, I'll cover many topics. We're going to have a wild romp. Please come, take my hand. Let's go exploring